In January 1692, young girls in Salem village started acting strangely. They were having fits and screaming. Those around were confused and shocked by what they saw. A doctor was brought to examine the girls. He could see no obvious cause for their suffering, and he suggested it could be witchcraft. And so began one of the most wild and intense witch hunts in history. For around 18 months, madness would take over the village, and 25 people would lose their lives. In our previous video, we looked at the lives of Abigail Williams, Betty Paris, Mary Warren, and Ann Putnam Jr., who were some of the young girls who accused their fellow villagers of being a witch. We saw what part they played and what is known about their lives after. But today we turn our attention to some of the stories of the victims. How did they get dragged in, and how did it turn out for them? Tituba. Tituba was an enslaved woman working in the home of Reverend Samuel Paris, the minister of Salem village. Living under the same roof were Abigail Williams and Betty Paris. These were the first two girls to act strangely, which started the events of the Salem witch trials. Details on Tituba's life before 1692 are vague. She was probably in her 20s or 30s. It's thought she may have been brought to America after being enslaved in Barbados, but it's hard to say for sure. After Abigail and Betty started showing signs that some viewed as being victims of witchcraft, Tituba, on the suggestion of a neighbour, baked a witch cake. This was folk magic, which was not totally uncommon for the times, but was risky. The cake would be made using the urine of the girls, and the plan would be to feed it to a dog, who would then identify the witch. Unfortunately for Tituba, when Samuel Paris found out she had done this in his home, he was furious, and possibly inflicted violence on her. Not long after, Tituba was one of 3 women named by the girls as a witch. Tituba may have been somewhat unwillingly brought into this, but it's fair to say her words fanned the flames and increased the fear and hysteria that followed. She claimed she was approached by a tall man who was seen as the devil. He asked her to sign a book. He would give her freedom if she signed. She said she could see strange animals and that she had flown with other witches on sticks. She said other villagers had also signed the book, but she didn't recognize their names, meaning a witch hunt was about to start. This story was as dramatic as any of the performances of the young girl accusers, and it gave credibility to what they were saying. So why would Tituba say what she did? It could be that she was pressured by Samuel Paris. Despite being a reverend, it was thought he was violent towards her, and maybe she was scared of him. Could it be possible that she believed her story? Many in the village genuinely believed witches were among them. Maybe she'd been traumatized being enslaved, or by the way she'd been treated. Or could it be that she had realized that by confessing she would stay alive? By becoming a witness rather than accused, it changed her whole narrative in the situation. Unlike many of the other accused, she did actually survive, so it could have been good strategy on her part. Although life was not great as she was kept in the filthy, overcrowded jail. This jail was a nightmare. At times it was boiling hot, at others freezing cold, and it was a place where sickness and disease were rife. Even after the village came to its senses and they could see the mistakes made, Tituba still remained in jail for a time, as her employer Paris refused to pay her jail fees. In time, someone else did pay for her release, which was good even though it's highly likely she was immediately enslaved again. After this, it seems she disappeared from history, so who can say how her story continued? Hopefully, she found some peace and had a better master than Paris. Giles and Martha Corey. Giles and Martha were an older married couple living in Salem Village in 1692. Martha was a woman with an interesting past. She had previously given birth to a son out of wedlock, which was a big no-no in society. On top of this, she could be outspoken. Puritan wives were expected to be quiet and submissive. However, she was a pious woman and a member of Salem Village Church. In March of 1692, Anne Putnam Jr. accused Martha of being a witch. Anne was the daughter of Thomas Putnam, who was highly involved in the trials in the background. He had previously quarrelled with Martha, and many people he had conflicts with found themselves accused by his daughter. Prior to her name being brought up, Martha had been vocally critical of the girl accusers, and told others not to believe them. Supposedly, when investigators came to her home, she said she knew why they had come. They took this as a sign of something bad. Martha was arrested and 2 days later brought to be examined in public. At this time, Anne and the other girls cranked up the drama, saying they were being hurt and tormented by Martha's spectre. It's been suggested that her own husband Giles believed the accusations and may have spoken against her. Martha was taken to Salem jail, where she languished in prison until her trial in September. But there was no hope. Once brought out, the girls, true to form, accused her of all sorts. She was found guilty and hanged a month later. If Giles Corey had in fact believed what his wife was accused of, it seems he quickly had a change of heart. He stood by his wife and criticised the trials, which unfortunately put a big target on him. And in April of 1692, he was also accused. At his trial, he refused to enter a plea. This may have been an attempt to stop his property from being seized, therefore not going to his family. But as we will see, it was a highly risky strategy. By law, a cruel method could be used to force someone to plea. Giles was laid on the ground, and over 2 long days, heavy weights were placed onto him. It was expected that this would be unbearable for the old man, and he would quickly plea. But he didn't. He bravely held strong as they continued to pile on the weight. As the villagers watched over 2 horrifying days, it's said that his last words before his death was "more weight." This dramatic ending, far from giving his accusers what they wanted, made him a heroic symbol of resistance. George Burroughs. George was an educated man who had previously been the minister in Salem village. Life for a religious man was not always easy. At this time there were wars, and he may have faced danger in his work. He had had 3 wives in his life, with the first 2 both dying. It's fair to say, partially due to the hard things he had faced, he was a serious man. Due to conflicts with some of the villagers, opinion on Burroughs were mixed. Like many of the accused people, he had quarrelled with the influential family, the Putnams. At the time of the trials, he wasn't even living in the village, but he was named as a suspect and was brought back for trial. It seems several of the key accusers pointed the finger at Burroughs, including Anne and Thomas Putnam. In fact, Anne said that his dead wives appeared to her as ghosts, saying he had killed them. As well as this, Abigail Williams claimed she had seen his spectre and that he had participated in witch gatherings. Strangely, he was also considered to have superhuman strength, and to some, this was clear evidence against him. Burroughs wasn't just accused of being a witch, it was said he was their head witch. For a man of his position, this was a terrible accusation. As an educated man with a history in the village, his trial and the outcome was one that certainly had many people interested in. The girls claimed that his spectre was hurting and biting them, and they could see his dead wives standing next to him. Burroughs was defiant and said he didn't know what was hurting the girls. He had no idea why they acted the way they did. Ultimately, he was found guilty and sentenced to be hanged. It was actually at his execution where the most interesting thing happened, and it was a moment that really made many question decisions that were being made. In front of the crowd gathered to watch him die, Burroughs perfectly recited the Lord's Prayer. This was hugely important, as it was believed a true witch could not say the Lord's Prayer. In other accused witch trials, some had been asked to say it, and due to nervousness, hesitation, or possibly having a strong accent, they were all considered to have got it wrong. Therefore, according to the theories of the accusers, they must be witches. But here was Burroughs doing it perfectly. This had a huge effect on the people gathered there. They were stunned. Some were crying and others surged forward, saying things must be stopped. He's clearly innocent. If ever there was a moment for the people to see the madness of what was happening, it was now. But he was still hanged. His death, however, really was a turning point for many people. There was clear doubt. Those in charge must have sensed a shift. The power that some of these young girls had with their pointing fingers was fading. With so many deaths, people were less keen to entertain their stories. The death of Burroughs became a symbol of the miscarriage of justice, and his name would always be remembered as a victim of the mass hysteria.